When Vivian opened her eyes, everything felt wrong. The air smelled of oil, grease, and metal instead of perfume and champagne. The smooth floor beneath her was gone, replaced by something cold and rough. Blinking against the morning light streaming through a dusty window, she realized she wasn't in her penthouse, or a hospital, or anywhere she recognized. She was lying on an old leather couch inside what looked like a mechanic's garage. The hum of an engine echoed faintly from outside. For a moment, panic rose in her throat. Her head throbbed, her designer dress was crumpled, and her diamond necklace was gone. She tried to sit up, clutching the edge of the couch, and that's when she saw her daughter, a little girl, maybe 8 or 9, sat on a stool beside her, swinging her legs and holding a bowl of soup. She had messy brown hair, curious eyes, and a smile that didn't belong in such a place. "You're awake," the girl said brightly, setting the bowl down on the table. "Daddy said you just needed rest. You were sleeping forever." Vivian's lips parted, but no words came. Her throat was dry, her body weak. "Where am I?" she finally managed. The girl grinned. "You're in my dad's garage. I'm Rosie. You fainted near the old bridge last night. Daddy found you when he was driving home from a tow job. He thought you were hurt, so he brought you here. I wanted to put a blanket on you, but you already had a really shiny dress." Vivian blinked, confusion swirling with embarrassment. The last thing she remembered was the party, the endless toasts, the fake congratulations, the loneliness hiding behind her perfect smile. Then everything had gone dark. She didn't remember leaving, or how she'd ended up near any bridge. The garage door creaked open, and a tall man stepped in, wiping his hands on a rag. He was rugged, dressed in worn jeans and a grease-stained shirt, but his eyes were gentle. "You're awake," he said quietly. "I was worried." Vivian straightened, trying to summon her old authority, but her voice faltered. "Who are you?" "Eli," he replied simply. "I run Hale Street Auto. You fainted by the roadside. I didn't want to leave you there, and the hospital's a bit far out, so I brought you here first. You were exhausted." Vivian's heart pounded with a mix of gratitude and pride. She wasn't used to being helped, especially not by strangers. "Thank you," she said stiffly. I'll call my driver." But when she reached for her phone, it wasn't there. Her handbag was gone too. Panic flashed again. Eli noticed and said calmly, "Your bag's in the drawer." "I didn't touch it except to keep it safe." "You passed out with it next to you." He nodded toward the workbench. She opened it, finding her phone dead, her wallet intact, and a small note beside it in a child's handwriting. "Hope you feel better soon." Rosie. Something in that childish scrawl hit her harder than she expected. No one had written her a note like that in years. She stayed silent for a moment, staring at the girl, who was humming softly while coloring on a piece of cardboard. The sight was oddly peaceful, a small world untouched by the rush and cruelty Vivian was used to. By the time her phone was charged, it was past noon. Outside, sunlight spilled over the old cars and tools, and Rosie was chasing a stray kitten between the tires. Eli worked quietly, the sound of his wrench rhythmic and steady. Vivian watched them, unable to shake the warmth she felt in that dusty, ordinary place. For years, she had lived for numbers, deals, and headlines. Her company, Hale Dynamics, had built her empire. Yet, sitting there with a bowl of soup that wasn't from a 5-star chef and the laughter of a little girl echoing through the garage, she realized she couldn't remember the last time she felt human. When she tried to leave, her heels clicked awkwardly on the concrete, and Eli stopped her. "You sure you're okay to drive? You didn't look too steady this morning." "I'll be fine," she said, forcing a smile. But before she could reach the door, Rosie ran up and tugged at her sleeve. "Wait! You forgot your soup." Vivian froze. Rosie held out a thermos wrapped in a paper napkin, smiling shyly. "I made it for you with Daddy's help. It's not fancy, but it makes people feel better." Vivian wanted to refuse. It was silly, unprofessional, but something in Rosie's hopeful eyes broke down her resistance. She took it, whispering, "Thank you." As she stepped outside, the city skyline glimmered in the distance, the same world she had built her name in, but now it felt cold. She got into her car and stared at the thermos on the passenger seat. Then, for the first time in a long while, she cried. Over the next few days, something strange began to happen. Vivian couldn't focus at her office. The board meetings, the quarterly reports, the endless arguments, everything felt hollow. Her assistant asked if she was all right, and she smiled it off. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw Rosie's smile. On the fifth day, she drove back to the garage. She told herself it was just to thank them properly, maybe offer some money for the trouble, but deep down, she knew it was more than that. When she arrived, Eli was under a car, humming a tune. Rosie spotted her first and ran up, arms wide. "You came back." Vivian laughed softly, kneeling to hug her. "I did. I wanted to thank you." Eli stood, brushing his hands clean. "You didn't have to come all the way here. I'm just glad you're better." Vivian hesitated, then reached into her bag and took out an envelope. "For your help." "It's not much," but Eli raised his hand, shaking his head. "Keep it. Kindness doesn't need payment." She was stunned. Nobody ever said no to her money. Nobody. Rosie tugged her sleeve again. "You can pay me with a story," she said with a grin. "Daddy tells me stories when I'm sad. You can tell me one too." Vivian smiled despite herself. She ended up staying for an hour, telling Rosie about her childhood, before success, before the loneliness, about a time when she still dreamed of being happy instead of being perfect. As days turned into weeks, Vivian found herself visiting more often. Sometimes she brought food, sometimes she just sat on the dusty steps and watched Rosie help her father fix cars. There was something healing about their small, ordinary world, a simplicity that money could never buy. Then one afternoon, Vivian overheard a quiet conversation between Eli and a man in uniform. Rosie was out front, and Vivian stood behind the door unnoticed. "Your bills are overdue, Eli," the man said. "If you don't pay by next month, the bank's taking the shop." Eli's voice stayed calm, though it trembled slightly. "I'll find a way. I always do." Vivian felt her chest tighten. That night, she couldn't sleep. She thought about all the lives her company affected, all the power she wielded, yet she had never used it for something that truly mattered. The next morning, she made a decision that surprised even herself. She called her legal team and instructed them to purchase the land behind Hale Street Auto, then quietly cleared Eli's debt through a private trust. When she visited later that week, Eli didn't mention it, but his eyes glistened when the bank called to inform him that his dues were cleared. He didn't know who had done it, but he looked at Vivian as if he somehow knew. That evening, the three of them sat outside the garage watching the sunset. Rosie leaned against Vivian's arm, half asleep. "Do you have a little girl too?" Rosie murmured. Vivian froze. "No," she whispered softly. I lost her years ago." Rosie didn't say anything, she just held Vivian's hand tighter. And that simple gesture undid every wall Vivian had ever built around her heart.